Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. My name is Mark Dalton, and I represent the defendant, Jason Reed. Today, you will hear evidence that will prove without a doubt that Jason Reed is innocent of the charges brought against him. You will hear testimony that establishes a clear sequence of events on the night in question, a timeline supported by credible witnesses, and documentation that places my client far from the scene of the alleged crime. But wait, as Mr. Dalton begins, you feel eyes shifting. Across the courtroom, the prosecutor leans forward, lips pressed, waiting. The judge reviews the case file one last time. In these moments, suspicion takes root, an unspoken question. Can we truly trust what we think we know? The prosecutor rises next. She thanks the judge, nods to the jury, and delivers her opening statement with deliberate calm. Ladies and gentlemen, the charges against Mr. Reed are severe: grand theft of proprietary data. We will prove he intentionally downloaded confidential documents belonging to his employer without permission, transferred them to an unauthorized device, and sold them to a rival company. You will hear eyewitness testimony from IT staff who monitored unusual network traffic. You will see digital logs. You will, if you believe the evidence, conclude that Jason Reed lied under oath when he claimed innocence. At that moment, a hush falls. The jury leans in. The defendant shifts in his chair. As each side sits, the air thickens. Which version of the story will carry weight? Doubt clings to every witness, every fact, and so we begin this trial, suspicion planted in fertile soil. Chapter 2. The first cross-examination. Doubts arise. The defense calls its first witness, Rebecca Sinclair, the night shift supervisor in the IT department. She testifies that at approximately 11:07 p.m. on August 14th, she noticed a series of large data transfers from an account belonging to Jason Reed. According to the network logs, nearly 2 gigabytes of files were copied to a USB device in his office. The prosecutor objects immediately, claiming hearsay, but the judge overrules, pointing out that the logs are business records and thus admissible. Rebecca continues, "I saw the alert pop up on my screen. I called Mr. Reed's office extension, but no one answered. I checked the surveillance feed and saw his office door was closed. I left him a voicemail to investigate. 30 minutes later, I sent a follow-up email." Mark Dalton stands. His voice is steady. He asks, "Ms. Sinclair, did you personally observe Mr. Reed at his desk during the alleged transfer?" She shakes her head. "No, sir. I saw the network activity in the system, but I did not physically see him doing it." A flicker of doubt crosses the jury's faces. If the logs show data moving but no one witnessed it directly, is there a gap large enough for another explanation? Dalton presses on. "Did you ever confirm with Mr. Reed that he performed the transfer?" She pauses. "Not directly. I assumed it was him because the user account was under his name." Dalton's gaze sharpens. Doubts awaken. Did someone else log in under his credentials? The jury leans forward. The prosecutor then pounces, "Ms. Sinclair, is it possible that Mr. Reed's credentials were used by someone else? Someone intent on framing him?" A beat passes. "It's possible," she admits quietly. The courtroom murmurs. Doubts take root. Chapter 3. Evidentiary bombshell. The lawyer's accusation. Next, the defense presents a forensic expert, Dr. Elena Moore. She testifies that the metadata on the files indicates they were modified at 11:11 p.m. for minutes after the initial transfer allegedly began. But here's the bombshell. The USB device was registered to an unregistered employee, someone not on the official roster. Past statements fly from both sides until Dalton goes on the offensive. He looks directly at the defendant. "Mr. Reed, your employer's system identified your login at 11:07 p.m. But these files were on a device that, according to IT procurement records, was never authorized to you. Do you deny using that device?" Jason's face remains impassive as he answers, "I never saw that USB stick in my life." Dalton's voice rises. "So you admit that you lied to your own software administrators? You lied under oath." A cold hush settles as everyone processes the question. The jury's hands hover over notebooks. Jason's jaw tightens. The judge calls for order, but the damage is done. Doubt becomes suspicion. Mark Dalton has publicly accused his client of lying. Gasps echo as Dalton pivots. "Ladies and gentlemen, my client is not a liar. Something else is happening here." He places the metadata report in front of Jason. "I want the truth. Are you hiding something?" Jason swallows. The jury stares. If he lied once, why wouldn't he lie again? The courtroom weighs every nuance. Chapter 4. The client's calm. Is he hiding something? Jason leans forward. His voice is measured. I told you everything I know. I never downloaded or transferred files to an unauthorized device. I logged into the network, yes, but I didn't have it USB. I have no idea how it got there. His calm belies tension, his knuckles whiten around the edge of the witness stand. The jury notices the discrepancy between his composed tone and the turmoil in his eyes. Dalton presses, Mr. Reed, do you have any enemies at work? Anyone who might benefit from framing you? Jason pauses before answering, I don't want to point fingers. But there was someone, my twin brother, Jacob. He's been off the grid for a while. I haven't heard from him in months. The defense attorney lowers his eyebrows in surprise. Whispers ripple through the courtroom. Jason continues, we look identical, but Jacob's always been the unstable one. He has skills with computers. He could have used my credentials. The prosecutor jumps up. Objection. Speculation. The judge sustains no proof of the twins' existence or involvement. The jury exchanges skeptical glances. If Jacob is real, why hasn't he been mentioned earlier? Jason states, I was ashamed. I thought I could handle this on my own. I didn't want my family involved. Suspicion lingers. Is Jacob a convenient scapegoat or a missing piece of the puzzle? Chapter 5. Breaking point. The attorney labels him a liar. After a brief recess, the trial resumes. Dalton no longer shields his frustration. He paces in front of the jury box. Ladies and gentlemen, my client stands accused of a crime he insists he did not commit. Yet every piece of evidence points to his guilt. He tells you an identical twin named Jacob did it. But we have no record of this Jacob. There is no proof he exists. So I ask again, Mr. Reed, are you lying to us today? Jason exhales slowly. I'm telling the truth. His voice trembles, but he maintains eye contact with Dalton. The prosecutor smirks. Dalton's tone sharpens. I find it impossible to believe that someone fabricated a twin to cover their tracks. Either you're lying or you've concocted the most elaborate fiction I've ever heard. Do you expect this jury to believe that when I present evidence proving you downloaded the files, it was actually your brother, a man entirely unaccounted for? Jason's lip quivers. Yes, I expect you to believe me because it's the truth. The judge warns Dalton to desist. Dalton leans in anyway. Then prove it. Today. Right now. Jason stands to leave the stand, and Dalton sneers. If you walk away without evidence, I will tell this jury you are a liar, and they will convict you. The courtroom trembles. The jury watches Jason's retreating back, thinking of Jacob, wondering if he's real or an invention. Suspicion hardens into conviction. Jason Reed is a clever liar. Chapter 6. Hidden Twin. Clues behind the scenes. Late afternoon, after the courtroom empties, Dalton retreats to his office. He studies the case file with renewed determination. Something doesn't add up. The USB device was never traced back to any employee except Jason's network login. But when the device was seized, it bore an inscription on its metal casing, an etching so faint it escaped IT's notice. He calls the evidence technician and asks for close-up photographs of the drive. On the screen, with digital magnification, Dalton spots two barely visible initials, JR. But there's another mark, almost erased, a second JR stamped in a different font. Two sets of initials? Could it be that Jason's twin also uses his own JR signature? Dalton's pulse quickens. He recalls Rebecca Sinclair's testimony. I saw the network activity in the system, but I did not physically see him doing it. That means someone else used his credentials. The jury never heard Jacob's name in any official record. But if Jacob worked with a different company or under a different name, there would be no digital paper trail. Dalton picks up the phone. Give me surveillance tapes from the building stairwell on August 14th between 10 p.m. and midnight. Then he rummages through personnel files looking for any mention, not of Jacob Reed, but the possibility of a second JR within the company records. At home that night, he reviews the surveillance footage. In the dim corridor camera, he sees one man, Jason Reed, entering room 412 at 11 p.m. 15 minutes later, a second man steps out. He wears a jacket identical to Jason's but moves with a different gait. His hair is slightly longer. His posture slants to one side. Dalton pauses the video, zooms in. The newcomer's hand bears a silver ring, a ring that's not on Jason's finger. Could this be Jacob? Heart pounding, Dalton sends a message to his investigator. Inquire about anyone with the initials JR who frequents that stairwell. and find out if Jason Reed has a twin. Chapter 7. Courtroom Eruption. The twin emerges. The next morning, Dalton bursts into the courtroom before proceedings commence. He informs the judge he has critical new evidence, proof of Jason's twin, Jacob, present on the night of August 14th. The judge hesitates, then allows a brief hearing outside the jury's presence. Dalton lays out the surveillance footage stills and a notarized affidavit from Detective Alvarez, who found a birth certificate listing twins born to Garrett and Linda Reed. Suddenly, the double doors to the hallway swing open, and walks a man wearing a dark hoodie pulled low over his eyes. His resemblance to Jason is uncanny. He removes the hood, and the courtroom gasps. The judge calls for order as murmurs swell. The twin steps forward, lifts his chin, and announces, "I'm Jacob Reed. I'm here to finish my testimony." The judge darts to his bench. Attorneys leap from their seats. The prosecutor stands in disbelief. Dalton motions for Jacob to approach the witness stand. Jacob's voice is steady. "I have evidence showing how I used Jason's credentials to access the files, intending to frame him because our mother left everything to me in her will. I needed the money. I was desperate." The jury watches Jacob's hands tremble slightly as he narrates his confession. Flashbulb moments ignite in their faces. The shock reverberates throughout the courtroom. These seconds will be replayed in every news segment, dissected for months. Chapter 8. Final Testimony. Truth versus Deception. Jacob takes the oath. His eyes flick to Jason, who sits behind Dalton, head bowed. The bailiff turns on the microphone. "State your name for the record." "Jacob Reed." His voice is firm. "Tell us exactly what happened on August 14th, Dalton prompts. Jacob clears his throat. "Jason and I are identical twins. You've seen us together? We can fool anyone. That night, I logged into Jason's work account in his office while he left for a family emergency. I had my own USB drive with me, one I bought on the black market to ensure no one could trace it back to me. I copied the files, then left. I returned later to switch out the drive with the one I labeled company files, so anyone who found it would think it belonged to Jason." He pauses as murmurs ripple. The prosecutor rises, trying to regain control. "Mr. Reed, did you do this to deflect attention from yourself and any other wrongdoing?" Jacob's gaze is unwavering. "I wanted to hurt Jason and take the inheritance. But I panicked when I saw the logs. I never expected this to become a big trial. I fled." Jason stands then, tears in his eyes. "I tried to tell you all along. It was him, not me. He's the one who set this trap." His voice cracks. The jury's eyes shift from Jacob back to Jason, confusion and empathy mingling. Dalton leans into Jacob. "Did you ever use Jason's ID badge to enter the building after hours?" Jacob nods. "Yes. I knew the security guards wouldn't question me." The prosecutor redirects. "Mr. Reed, did Jason have any knowledge or involvement in your plan?" Jacob shakes his head. "He had no idea. We haven't spoken in months after a fight over money. I acted alone." The jury scribbles notes. Truth and deception collide in their minds. This trial has transformed from a straightforward case of theft to a saga of brotherly betrayal. Chapter 9. Closing Arguments. Wrapping up the twist. With the twins' confession recorded, Dalton rises for his closing argument. His tone is restrained, almost somber. "Ladies and gentlemen, earlier this week, I called my client a liar. I stand by my frustration facing that evidence. I felt betrayed. But that belief was shattered when Jacob Reed stepped forward. My client, Jason, was deceived by his brother. The evidence you saw, network logs, metadata, surveillance footage, now fits a chilling pattern of imposter testimony. We know beyond a reasonable doubt that Jason did not steal or transfer those files. It was Jacob's plan, and his betrayal was cunningly concealed by using Jason's credentials. I ask you, is there a shred of doubt now that Jason is innocent?" The prosecutor rises too, her voice measured but weary. "Members of the jury, this case began with accusations and evidence pointing to theft. We believed we had the truth. But the unexpected confession we heard today changes everything. We have no reason to doubt that Jacob acted alone. Jason's lies were understandable. He was protecting his reputation, unaware of his twin scheme. He believed Jacob was missing. He refused to believe his own twin could betray him so deeply. I ask you to consider compassion and justice. Jacob admits guilt. Jason maintains innocence. The only just verdict is that Jason be acquitted and Jacob be held fully responsible." The jury withdraws to deliberate. In hushed conversation, they replay every moment, from the moment Dalton labeled Jason a liar to Jacob's dramatic arrival. Chapter 10. Aftermath, Legal and Emotional Fallout. Later that day, the jury returns. The judge asks for the verdict. Four-person stands, voice clear. We, the jury, find the defendant, Jason Reed, not guilty of grand theft of proprietary data. There's a collective exhale. Jason collapses into his seat, trembling. Dalton places a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Jacob's fate is settled swiftly. Prosecutors file new charges: identity theft, computer fraud, conspiracy to defraud. He's remanded into custody. As the gavel falls, Jason steps into the aisle. He walks past the jury box, nodding gratefully. He pauses before Jacob. Their eyes meet, twin souls bound by blood, now divided by betrayal. In a moment without words, Jason turns away. In the hallway afterward, reporters swarm. Flashbulbs pop. Cameras flash as Jason steps into the light. He takes a deep breath and offers a brief statement. "Thank you for believing the truth. My brother made choices I never imagined. I hope he finds the help he needs." The story spreads like wildfire, news headlines splashed with secret twin shocks court, identical brother confesses to computer fraud, and lawyer labels client a liar, verdict, innocent. Viewers debate who was more tragic, the innocent man nearly convicted or the twin lost to desperation. For Jason, life after the trial is bittersweet. His reputation restored, he returns home to rebuild his career. But every time he walks past a mirror, he sees not just himself, but the reflection of a brother who betrayed him. In counseling sessions, he speaks of forgiveness and the struggle to trust again. In the office, clients question his history. Trust must be earned anew. For Mark Dalton, this trial becomes a turning point. He pins an in-depth article on the ethics of labeling a client a liar without irrefutable proof. He speaks at legal conferences, warning of the dangers when a courtroom drama rests on unseen family secrets. Ultimately, the tale of Jason and Jacob Reed becomes legend, an example of how truth can be hidden in plain sight, how identical faces can conceal vastly different souls, and how justice can hinge on a single, desperate act.
I remember the first time I walked into that gleaming corporate tower, my heart pounding like a drum. I had just learned I was pregnant with my first child, a moment that should have filled me with joy and hope. But that morning, as I stepped into the lobby wearing my uniform and clutching my cleaning supplies, a knot tightened in my stomach. The security guard barely glanced at me. No one greeted me. I rode the elevator alone to the 32nd floor, where the offices of Titan Tech Industries gleamed like a fortress. I had worked there for 2 years, cleaning floors and wiping down desks, but I had never seen the inner sanctum where the CEO's office stood. Today, I was summoned. My mind raced with questions. Why was I needed this early? Was it because I was pregnant and someone claimed I couldn't handle the usual tasks? Or worse, had I done something wrong? When the executive assistant buzzed me in, I knocked on the heavy mahogany door. Inside, the room was immaculate: marble floors, a wall of trophies behind the desk, and large windows overlooking the city. In the center sat Alexander Caldwell IV, a man with silver-streaked hair and a tailored suit that cost more than my monthly rent. His gaze flicked up from the financial report he was reading. I felt exposed under his cold, calculating stare. Then he spoke. "Ms. Rivera, I have a special task for you today." My breath caught. Special task. What could that mean? He laid out the order with chilling clarity. There's been a spill in the chemical storage area, highly toxic waste. I need you to clean it up before anyone else notices. No protective gear is available right now. Just do it quickly. My heart sank as he turned a page, signaling our conversation was over. No empathy, no concern for my condition. As I backed out of the room, my mind reeled with disbelief. Clean toxic waste, pregnant, and no safety measures. My cheeks burned with fear. Yet a quiet voice in my head whispered, "Record him. If I showed the world what he commanded, maybe someone would believe me. That single decision to lift my phone and capture his words would set off a chain reaction that toppled his empire. But at that moment, I only felt dread. I felt the weight of power, the threat to my unborn child, and the dawning realization that I might risk everything to save others from his cruelty. Chapter 1. The cleaner's daily struggle. My days usually began at 5 a.m., long before the building's tenants arrived. The elevator music, soft jazz playing through hidden speakers, felt like a cruel joke as I wheeled my cleaning cart down the deserted hallways. I grew up in a small town outside San Antonio, watching my mother clean offices to support our family. When my husband died in a car accident 2 years ago, I moved to the city to find work and build a future for my unborn baby. Every dollar I earned was sent home to my parents to help with my mother's medical bills. I learned early that cleaning in a high-rise company meant disappearing into the background. Tenants often ignored me, even as I scrubbed coffee stains from plush carpets or wiped fingerprints off glass conference tables. My uniform, navy pants, and a creased blue shirt felt heavy on my pregnant frame. My back ached constantly, and my feet swelled by mid-afternoon. But I never complained. I needed this job. On most days, I would say a little prayer as I unlocked the custodial closet and prepared my supplies: mop, bucket, disinfectant, and cleaning cloths. At 6:30 a.m., I would start on the executive floor, emptying trash bins, sanitizing doorknobs, and polishing the CEO's office windows until they sparkled. I always marveled at the framed accolades on Alexander Caldwell's walls: Fortune 500 ranking plaques, environmental awards, and photos with politicians. I wondered how someone so celebrated could be capable of ordering harm to an innocent cleaner. As my pregnancy progressed, I found myself more tired, but I pushed forward. In the mornings, I wore a maternity support belt under my uniform. During my breaks, I sat in a hidden corner of the lobby, sipping lukewarm coffee and scrolling through messages from my sister, who reminded me to rest and eat well. But money was tight and rent was due. I couldn't afford to miss a day. Each night, I crawled into bed exhausted, my belly heavy with both hope and fear for the baby growing inside me. Chapter 2. The CEO's arrival and chilling demand. That Tuesday began like any other. I arrived before dawn, unlocked the closet, and began my routine. At 7:45 a.m., I heard hurried footsteps outside the CEO's office. The assistant called me in. My pulse raced as I crossed the threshold. Caldwell sat behind his massive desk, eyebrows furrowed over a glowing laptop screen. "Ms. Rivera," he said, without looking up, "we have a problem." His voice was smooth, devoid of warmth. I bowed my head respectfully. "Yes, Mr. Caldwell. How can I help?" Even as I spoke, my body tightened. Pregnancy hormones made everything feel sharper, riskier. Caldwell leaned back, eyes narrowing. "Late last night, one of our maintenance workers detected a leak in storage room B, a small tornado of toxic sludge. Our environmental consultant isn't available until tomorrow, and I want the spill cleaned immediately. That scrap of contract we have with that cheap janitorial firm, I want you to handle it. No gear, no questions." Shock paralyzed me. "But, sir, I'm pregnant," my voice cracked. He cut me off with a dismissive wave. "There's no time for your excuses. Clean it now." His tone left no room for negotiation. In that moment, I saw him for who he truly was, a man who put profits above human life, willing to risk my baby's safety to save his company embarrassment. My mind raced. "Please, there has to be a protective suit or gloves." He snapped his fingers, and the assistant appeared, wheeling in a standard-issue mop and bucket. "That's your suit," Caldwell said flatly. "Get to work." I clenched my jaw, the weight of his command pressing on my chest. The hallway outside smelled of bleach, and I felt a surge of panic. My baby's heartbeat fluttered in my womb like a frightened bird. And then, a thought. If I remained silent, this injustice would continue. I raised my phone beneath the desk, angling the camera lens. "You're ordering me to clean toxic waste without protection," I said quietly, making sure the mic captured his words. Caldwell's eyes flicked to me for a second, but he returned to the laptop. "Exactly. Now move." As I left his office, phone tucked in my pocket, my heart pounded with a mix of fear and resolve. I knew this could be dangerous. If he discovered I recorded him, I could lose my job. But I also knew I was doing the right thing, to protect myself, my baby, and perhaps countless others who would face the same threat. Chapter 3: Fear, Duty, and a Pregnant Woman's Resolve. I found storage room B at the far end of the floor, double doors labeled "Authorized Personnel Only." The scent of chemicals hit me like a wave, acrid, metallic, and nauseating. Inside, brownish-green sludge dripped from a cracked drum, pooling on the floor and seeping toward the threshold. I gagged. Every instinct screamed at me to run. My phone glowed in my pocket, a lifeline to the world. I wiped sweat from my brow and forced myself to focus. My unborn daughter deserved a chance at life. I retrieved the mop, snapped on the mop head, and approached the edge of the spill. Each step felt intentional, heavy. In my mind, I replayed each moment of my life: my husband's laughter, my mother's prayers, and the ultrasound where I first saw my baby's tiny heartbeat. Those memories gave me courage. As I dipped the mop into my bucket, my phone vibrated in my pocket. A text from my sister: "Be careful, mi hermana. You're all I have left." My chest tightened. If I got sick or lost the baby, I had no safety net. Yet I reminded myself why I was doing this. I had to expose the truth. I turned on the phone's recorder, and with each sweeping stroke, I inched toward the spill. My face burned with the sting of toxic fumes, and my eyes watered uncontrollably. I toughed it out, wiping sweat from my cheek, determined not to falter. Each pass of the mop head through the sludge felt like wading through a pool of nightmares. My hands trembled, my feet felt unsteady. I pictured my daughter curling in my womb, her tiny form vulnerable to the chemicals swirling around me. I whispered a prayer out loud, asking for strength. And in that whisper, I felt a spark of defiance. I would survive this. I would protect her. After 20 agonizing minutes, the worst of the spill was contained. I drained the bucket into a makeshift drain instructed by Caldwell, an illegal shortcut that went directly to the city's wastewater system. I paused, heart racing, as I realized the broader consequences. Not only did I risk my child's life, but I'd just participated in an environmental crime. The weight of that realization made me shake. But I had what I needed: video evidence. I turned off the recorder, breathing shallow, and backed out of the room, uncertain if my legs could carry me. Chapter 4: Recording the unthinkable. Once I was back in the hallway's relative safety, I texted my best friend, Elena, attaching the video file. My fingers trembled as I typed, "Watch now. Please." "It's bad." Elena had always been my rock, an activist who worked for a local nonprofit fighting for workers' rights. If anyone could amplify this story, it was her. As the file uploaded, I collapsed on a nearby bench, breathing rapidly. The adrenaline coursing through my veins made my heart pound like thunder. My phone buzzed almost immediately. Elena's message flashed on the screen: "I'm watching." "Oh, Dios mío. This is..." She sent a screenshot of Caldwell's words: "No protective gear. Clean it now." I read it over and over, the coldness of his command sinking in again. I felt a tear roll down my cheek, half from fear, half from relief that someone else could see what I'd just endured. I had to get out of there before anyone questioned me. I cleaned up the mop and bucket, pushing them back into the janitorial closet, wiping every trace of sludge from my uniform. My hands were still shaking as I wiped the sweat from my forehead. I caught a glimpse of myself in the polished elevator door, a disheveled woman in her second trimester, streaked with grime, eyes wide with shock. I forced myself to breathe slowly, secure the phone in my bag, and walk to the exit. In the lobby, sunlight filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows felt like a blessing. I paused at the door, taking a moment to steady myself. Then I stepped into the bright morning, determined to see this through. Chapter 5: Uploading the Evidence. A viral explosion back in my tiny apartment. I paced the living room, waiting for Elena's next move. The video was already circulating among her activist network. By noon, she called me, "Mi amiga." The video hit 5,000 views. People are furious. I'm taking it to local reporters. My chest tightened. Reporters meant cameras, questions, possible retaliation. But the injustice burned too deeply. I couldn't hide. I spent the afternoon answering messages from journalists, 2 local stations, a nonprofit legal team, and a national news blog. One reporter asked if I'd be willing to talk on camera. My palms sweated at the thought of being exposed, but I knew hiding would weaken the story. By evening, I agreed to a short interview on camera, masked, voice disguised. I wanted people to see Caldwell's face, to know he would confront power without remorse. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. My phone buzzed incessantly, comments from supporters, strangers offering legal aid, and threats from anonymous numbers warning me to remove the video or face consequences. Fear not at me. Would I still have a job tomorrow? Would Caldwell retaliate? Would my baby be safe? But beneath the fear, a determination bloomed. This was bigger than me. This was about justice and protecting the vulnerable. By the next morning, the video had gone national. Headlines like "CEO Caught Exploiting Pregnant Worker" and "Latina Cleaner versus Corporate Titan" plastered social media timelines. Videos of influencers reacting, demanding Caldwell's ouster, flooded the internet. Titan Tech's stock began to plummet as investors freaked out. On the evening news, anchors played snippets of the footage, calling for an investigation. I clutched my belly, feeling my daughter flutter, as though she sensed the storm swirling around us. Chapter 6: Public Outrage and Media Frenzy. The following days were a blur of phone calls, interviews, and notifications. My phone became a lifeline and a burden, messages of solidarity from strangers, legal advice from pro bono attorneys, and an avalanche of hate from Caldwell's supporters. I tried to sleep, but every knock on the door made my heart leap. I grew paranoid that someone would come for me. I kept my blinds closed and threw away unknown phone numbers. Meanwhile, the media circus grew. Major news outlets demanded exclusive interviews, offering anonymity and legal protection. I weighed the risks. Each appearance risked exposing my face and identity. But to truly hold Caldwell accountable, people needed to see me, to know that a real woman with a real life was behind the footage. So, over the course of 3 days, I granted a handful of interviews to reputable outlets, speaking through tears about my fear, my pregnancy, and Caldwell's indifference to human life. My voice shook as I described the stink of chemicals, my baby's kick, and the moment I pressed record. Each retelling was painful, but each one added fuel to the public outrage. Protests sprang up in front of Titan Tech's headquarters. Hundreds gathered, holding signs that read, "Justice for Maria, protect workers, not profits," and "Caldwell, clean up your mess." I watched live streams of people chanting my name. My niece's face would flash on my phone. She said she was proud, but I could tell she was scared for me. I tried to hold back tears. I thought of my unborn daughter, her future. If Caldwell's empire crumbled, I hoped it would mean safer conditions for workers everywhere. By the end of the week, major celebrities tweeted about the case. A few human rights organizations called for an immediate investigation and demanded that Titan Tech be held liable for environmental and labor safety violations. On Friday morning, news broke that the Environmental Protection Agency and the Department of Labor had opened joint investigations. Titan Tech's board was meeting to decide Caldwell's fate. I pressed my hand to my stomach, tears streaming as the world watched. Chapter 7. Legal battles and company shutdown. The suit was filed within days, a class action lawsuit on behalf of all Titan Tech employees, citing hazardous workplace conditions and wrongful endangerment. My attorneys assured me that evidence in the video and my testimony would be enough to dismantle Caldwell's defenses. Still, I worried about legal fees, possible countersuits, and the strain on my mental health during pregnancy. I spent afternoon hospital visits monitoring my baby's heartbeat, terrified that stress might harm her. But every time I heard her tiny flutter, I found renewed resolve. The legal process moved faster than I ever imagined. A judge issued an emergency injunction ordering Titan Tech to cease operations at the chemical storage site until safety protocols were implemented and proper protective equipment provided. Titan Tech's stock plummeted further as investors lost confidence. Caldwell issued a public apology on behalf of the company, an apology that felt hollow to me. I watched clips of him standing behind a podium, chastened, promising to do better. But the video was his own words that haunted me, ordering me, a pregnant woman, to scrub toxic sludge with no protection. By mid-June, Titan Tech announced a full voluntary shutdown of operations for a major safety overhaul. The board suspended Caldwell pending further review. Headlines screamed, "Billionaire CEO humiliated, company halts production." I stood on my apartment balcony as fireworks from a neighborhood festival lit the sky. I thought of those celebrations and felt a pang of guilt. Was it right to celebrate someone's downfall? But I reminded myself that this was accountability, a rare moment when power bowed to principle. During depositions, I described every detail: the smell of chemicals, the fear in my bones, the moment I decided to record. Caldwell's lawyers tried to discredit me, casting doubt on my recollection, insinuating I had tampered with the footage. But forensic experts authenticated the video's metadata. Date, time, and camera data matched my phone's logs. My oath under oath remained unwavering. Each time I testified, I felt the weight of countless workers who had nowhere else to turn. Chapter 8. Aftermath. Lives changed forever as Titan Tech remained shuttered. A ripple effect spread through the industry. Competitors enacted stricter safety protocols. Janitorial firms began advocating for formal protective gear training. My story appeared in textbooks on business ethics and labor rights. Emails poured in from cleaners, construction workers, and factory employees, thanking me for giving them a voice. Some shared their own stories of mistreatment, their voices joining a chorus demanding accountability. But the aftermath was not all glory. The stress of the trial took its toll on my body. I was hospitalized briefly for preterm contractions. My doctors warned me that stress had endangered my baby. In my hospital bed, I clutched my spouse's hand and whispered apologies to my daughter for the turmoil I'd brought her into. Yet when she was born 5 weeks early, weighing just 3 pounds, and took that first strained cry, I knew every sacrifice had been worth it. She was a fighter, just like me. Caldwell's board ultimately voted to terminate him. His personal fortune took a nosedive as investors filed claims for negligence and environmental damages. He retreated from the public eye, selling his lavish penthouse and disappearing from social media. Meanwhile, I tried to rebuild my life. I returned to work part-time, cleaning offices with a newfound confidence. I refused to be victimized again. When the company that had replaced Titan Tech offered me a position as a safety consultant, training janitors on protective protocols, I accepted. I wanted to ensure no worker ever faced what I endured. My daughter, whom I named Esperanza, thrived in my arms. Every time she smiled, I felt a surge of hope. I watched her learn to crawl, then walk, and I knew that the fight I undertook was not just for me, but for her future. We moved into a small house in a quieter neighborhood. My parents saved enough to visit from Texas, doting on their granddaughter and reminding me of the price we paid for justice. Chapter 9: Reflection, Power, Accountability, and Hope. Sometimes I still watch the original video footage, feeling a mix of horror and pride. Horror that a billionaire could treat a pregnant woman as disposable, pride that I refuse to be silent. The story taught me that power, unchecked, can lead to unimaginable cruelty, but also that a single act of courage can tilt the scales. I look at my daughter now, bright-eyed and curious, and I vow to raise her in a world where empathy trumps greed, where every worker knows their rights, and where corporate titans are reminded that humanity is not negotiable. I'm often asked what advice I would give to others in similar situations. I tell them truthfully, do not let fear paralyze you. If you see injustice, document it. Speak out even if your voice shakes. Seek allies, friends like Elena, legal advocates, and supportive community members. And above all, remember that you deserve dignity and safety, no matter your job title or social status. In the end, this story is not just about a ruthless CEO brought low. It's about resilience, the resilience of a pregnant cleaner who refused to gamble with her child's life. It's about the collective power of ordinary people demanding accountability. And it's about hope, hope that a better world is possible when even the smallest among us refuses to be silent. As I tuck Esperanza into bed each night, I tell her bedtime stories of heroes and justice, of voices raised and wrongs righted. I whisper a prayer of gratitude for her health, for the community that stood with me, and for the lesson that adversity, when met with courage, can become a beacon of change. The lasting legacy today, Titan Tech, is a cautionary tale in business schools. My story appears in documentaries about labor rights and environmental justice. I travel occasionally to speak at conferences, sharing my experience and inspiring others to stand up for what is right. Yet my greatest joy remains watching my daughter grow, knowing that because I refuse to back down, she has a chance at a safer, more just world. When I look back on that rainy Tuesday morning, when Caldwell's words echoed in my ears, I remember fear. But I also remember that fleeting moment of clarity when I lifted my phone and chose to record. That moment set in motion a wave of change far beyond my own life. It reminds me that each of us, no matter our circumstances, possesses the power to challenge injustice. And for that lesson, I am endlessly grateful.